I review Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics from Goodman Games today on Dungeon Craft.
Yes, bringer here. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on any cool content.
Dungeon Crawl Classics, this is not a book, this is a weighty tome, over 500 lovingly illustrated pages. It is a player's handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and monster manual all in one. I love this interior splash page art by the great Doug Kovacs, and it really captures the spirit of this game. This guy is being eaten, his compatriots are desperately trying to save him, and he's dropping his torch, and that's because in this game, not everyone can see in the dark, and characters actually die. It has a decidedly old school feel, and it features a lot of old school artists like the late Jim Rosloff, rest in peace. How's this game different from what I've played before? So it's roll 20, roll high, the 6 traditional ability scores, 3d6. There's no attacks of opportunity, feats, or skill points. Classes and races are the same. Clerics roll to cast and can turn creatures unholy to their religion. Wizards roll to cast, and if they roll high, they get extra effects, and if they roll low, they can suffer a miscast and mutation. There's a critical hit matrix. Instead of just getting extra damage with a natural 20, you roll on a special chart. Each class has its own, and you can get extra cool effects. You're no hero, you're an adventurer, a reaver, a cutpurse, a heathen slayer, a tight-lipped warlock guarding long-dead secrets. In other words, you're a badass, and this is a lot more like Conan the Barbarian, the good one with Arnold, than Marvel superheroes. Character creation funnel. So you're going to create a number of characters by rolling 3d6 straight down the line, including some terrible characters, and you're not going to get rid of them. Instead, you're going to go on a 0-level adventure called a character funnel, and most of them will probably die, and whatever you're left with can advance to first level. So if you don't like a certain character because you don't like their stats, you make them search for traps and open all the doors. Funky dice. In addition to the traditional polyhedrons, it also uses Zaki dice. D3s, D7s, D14s, D16s, D24s, and the D30. And you may ask, Professor, who has a D30? And the answer is, I do, because I'm Professor Dungeon Master, but you could get them at ChessX. They list a bunch of places that you can get them below, and you can also use this. They've got a translation system over here. Ability scores, 6 ability scores. Strength is strength, intelligence is intelligence, agility is dexterity, stamina is constitution. Charisma has been changed to personality, and luck takes the place of wisdom. But not really, because clerics use personality to cast spells instead of wisdom. Luck is a pool of luck points. When you fail a critical roll, you can spend, let's say, 6 or whatever luck points to make it. They can't be regained, they can only be spent, and once you lose them, they are gone forever, and your character is out of luck. You start at 0 level with D4 hit points and a handful of copper and a randomly determined occupation. And you can get things like cheesemaker, ditch digger, and my favorite, gong farmer, which literally shovels shit. And you'll have some sort of tool that's appropriate to your class. So in this picture by the late great Jim Holloway, you could see the baker's got his rolling pin and the candle maker's got his candle, and this farmer has his pitchfork, and they're struggling against this single skeleton. If you survive your first adventure, you will choose a class, and you've got all the traditional classes here. Clerics roll to cast. If they roll 1, their god could become angry with them and refuse to answer their prayers. Thieves are thieves, not rogues. Back in the old days, they were called thieves before parental groups got involved, and Dungeons & Dragons didn't want to seem like they were condoning an illegal activity. Warriors are fighters, and one of the coolest concepts here is mighty deeds of arms. So if your fighter wants to do something that's cool, it's not covered by the rules, like target your opponent's eyes or push them off a cliff, they make their D20 roll, and they also roll their deed die, which is, I think, a D8, and on a 3 or better, no adjustments, the deed is successful. Bob Worldbuilder's got a great video on this topic, link below. It is a fantastic concept, and personally, I think it's more fun than all the 5e feats put together. Wizards roll to cast. All of them have supernatural patrons, very much like warlocks in the 5e game. Dwarfs are very good fighters who have infravision. Elves are fighter magic users. Halflings are their own class, and they have infravision. They're also extremely stealthy and lucky. Fumbles. If you roll a 1, you roll on the fumble table, and here's a great illustration of this axe head falling off. Not everybody's going to like that, but I personally find it hilarious. I think it's ridiculous that nothing ever bad happens and no one drops their weapons. Critical hits. There are several charts for thieves and elves. Strike through the heart, inflict 3d6 extra damage, and the foe must make a fortitude save or die instantly, regardless of how many hit points they have. Strike through the ear canal, enters the brain, earwax instantly removed, and again, fortitude save or you're going to die. Warriors and dwarves, skull crushed like a melon, inflict 3d12 damage with this strike, and the foe must make a fortitude save or die in d3 rounds. See, the fighters and dwarves, their damage is higher than that of the elves. So each class has their own critical hit chart. Super cool. Spell burn. When magic users cast spells, they can burn ability scores if they fail a spell roll. So that's really cool and flavorful. Corruption. If you roll a 1, you are subject to corruption and you may mutate. So this guy starts here as a fine-looking young man and ends up, he's got a horn coming out of his head and he's covered with bugs. Major corruptions are things like a face growing out your back or eyeballs growing out of your forehead. Really gruesome stuff. And here's a great illustration, again by Jim Holloway. The wizard is casting a spell on this Umber Hulk, but he's changed the warrior's head into a chicken. Is this to everyone's taste? No. But my players personally love this kind of stuff. That's one of the reasons the wizards love casting spells. It's because of the great stories we have when something goes wrong. Much of the book consists of spells, and you'll notice they're very familiar. Things like Magic Missile and Shield and Sleep and Spider Climb, all the classic D&D spells. So why do they take up a page or sometimes more each? Each spell comes with its own critical hit chart. So just for an example, Protection from Evil. If you roll low, the spell fails. If you barely make it, the cleric gets a +1 bonus just for himself. If they roll higher, the +1 bonus extends to a 10-foot radius and includes his friends. And then it goes to a 20-foot radius and a +2 bonus. And then a 30-foot radius and a +3 bonus. So the higher the cleric rolls, the better the effect of the spell. Same thing with Fireball. The higher the magic user rolls, the more explosive the effects. And it's incredible. I mean, this is just one spell here, like neutralize poison or disease. So you will probably be using this ribbon, or you could use Post-its like I do to keep track of which spells your players have. We also have stuff on the gods. It contains a great Dungeon Master's guide with an excellent section on overland travel that I'm a big fan of. The fates, how they work, divine aid, how it works, magic items, monsters. There are lots of random charts, so each hobgoblin and orc tribe will be different. Kobolds, they look like dogs. When did they turn into lizard people? How did that happen? Appendix N, name charts, and this great module, The Portal Under the Stairs. It is a 0-level character funnel designed by Joe Goodman himself, and it's fantastic. There's an additional scenario as well, so you even get 2 scenarios to start. This book is a tremendous value. It is fantastic if you like a grimdark yet funny kind of game. You want a game that's unpredictable and your players don't take it too seriously. Like, they're not going to cry if their character dies. It's dark, it's dirty, it's gritty. The characters will struggle to survive. It says right in the rules, it's very difficult to attain a level over 5th. And it's not to everyone's taste, but it certainly is to mine, and I give it a very high recommendation. If you want to pick it up, you can click on the link below and put in the promo code PROFDM, and you will get a discount. And now, on to Mutant Crawl Classics. So Mutant Crawl Classics, hardbound, stitch binding. Look at these gorgeous inside covers. This is the known world. This is some terrific splash art. And we have 300 pages of game here. And it follows the same format as Dungeon Crawl Classics. The table of contents is laid out the same way. This is a nice foreword by James Ward, the author of the original Gamma World, and this game owes Gamma World a huge debt. It's really Gamma World 2.0, and there's a preface by the author Jim Wampler as well. An introduction to Terra, which is Earth far in the future. How is this game different from what I played before? Well, it's not different if you've played Dungeon Crawl Classics, because it's most of the same concepts here. There's no prestige classes, tax of opportunity feats, or skill points. Classes and races are the same. Healers replace clerics, shaman replace wizards. You can burn off luck points to make rolls, and instead of spell burn, there is glow burn. Same weird dice as Dungeon Crawl Classics. The ability scores are the same: strength, agility, stamina, personality, intelligence, and luck. You start at 0 level, the only occupations are hunter or gatherer, and you roll a random genotype: pure strain human, mutant, manimal, or planchient. And you have all these different subtypes so that your mutant will be unique. Character classes include Sentinel, Shaman, Healer, Rover. Those are the human classes. In addition, you could be a mutant, manimal, or planchant. And these last three characters have random mutations. The key here is randomness. There are tons of mutations, as I mentioned earlier. Instead of Spellburn, you have Glowburn. There are physical mutations, mental mutation, heightened stamina, increased speed, metamorphing. One of my favorite mutations is the dual brain. You actually have two brains. That's cool. You could generate force fields. That means you could roll up potentially hundreds of different characters with different random mutant powers, and as they go up in level, they gain new mutations. Combat works the same as Dungeon Crawl Classics, natural 20, you get a critical hit, and each class has its own chart. A natural 1 is a fumble. That's a great picture of this guy getting his teeth punched out. And these charts follow the same pattern as Dungeon Crawl Classics. They're really gory, and they're specific to each class. Artificial intelligences and how to design them. Instead of magic items, you have artifacts. We get a bestiary of mutated animals. Instead of patron demons, there are patron AIs. Optional rules for creating a multiverse, so you can have a Dungeon Crawl Classics, Mutant Crawl Classics crossover event. This was very big in the 70s. AD&D's Dungeon Master's Guide had conversion rules for Gamma World, and there was a crossover module called Expedition to Barrier Peaks. Appendix N, inspirational work like Planet of the Apes and Zardoz and Thundar the Barbarian. I love Thundar the Barbarian. It was the greatest grim dark Saturday morning cartoon show of all time, and I am convinced if it had a toy line, it would have been just as big or bigger than He-Man. A zero-level character funnel called Assault on the Sky High Tower. It looks like a lot of fun. If you're looking for a lighthearted post-apocalyptic game, Mutant Crawl Classics might just be for you. It's got that Thundar the Barbarian kind of vibe that I love, and if I were going to run a post-apocalyptic game, this would probably be my first choice. Both Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics are everything I love about indie role-playing games. Craftsmanship, attention to detail, fantastic production values, and books that are never going to fall apart. If you want to pick them up, follow the link below and use the promo code PROFDM. Also below, you'll find links to Dungeoncraft on Patreon and Facebook if you want more of this content. But don't go away. Check out these reviews of other indie games, including Index Card RPG. I'll see you soon. May all your rolls be 20s.
Ah, the 80s. A decade so badass even children's shows were about the apocalypse. If you want to party like Ookla Amok, click on these videos and watch more Dungeon Craft.